I really do think that a lot of the times when the word leader comes up, that people automatically think about somebody who has a title, such as boss or supervisor, somebody who has employees or direct reports under them. But look at this pictorial, which I like. On this pictorial, we have Mr. Centurion, who is being the boss. There he is sitting at the back telling his subjects and his the people that he's over what to do, where to go, how to do it. But then look at the pictorial under it. We have the word leader. And there's a difference. Mr. Centurion is out front, leading on his troops, showing them by example, empowering them, right? So there's like 80 some definitions of leadership. And there's some components of what a leader is in some of those definitions, and others I am not too sure about, but I kind of sort of like this one that I saw on Forbes.com. It says leadership is a process of social influence which maximizes the efforts of others towards the achievement of a goal. Let me read that again for you. Leadership is a process of social influence which maximizes the efforts of others towards the achievement of a goal. Notice key elements of this definition. The leadership stems from social influence, not necessarily authority or power. When we're thinking about a supervisor, a manager, a boss, those titles and that authority, that's what people think about, but it's the social influence. Leadership does require others, and that implies they don't have to be your direct reports. It just means that they are following you because you have pretty much shown them that the goal or whatever values you're dealing with is something they want to be on board with. There's no mention of personality traits, attributes, or even a title. Really, there are actually many styles and paths to effective leadership. And a lot of the best leaders use a combination of those. Leadership also includes a goal. It's not just influence without an intended income. These days, a lot of the times we hear words like, oh, the person is an influencer, or, something like that. And a lot of the times it's just a celebrity that has a lot of followers that wants to be watched and people to talk about them. Of course, it makes them money, but there's really no goal in it, too much for the followers or intended outcome. And lastly, what makes this definition different from most academic definitions is that it includes maximizes the efforts of others. You want to empower people so that they can lead from where they are. Okay, I like this pictorial because it shows you somebody with a title or position in a place versus a leader. For example, the word manager. When we see the manager, it's like the manager gives directions. They have subordinates, has great ideas, tries to be a hero. But when you look at manager versus leader, you see where the leader is more into asking questions, just naturally has the followers, shows you how to do things, creates change, develops and empowers their followers, and makes heroes out of them. So a little bit more about Toastmasters International. How many people here have heard of Toastmasters or know what Toastmasters is all about? Just by your virtual hands. Yes, I see some thumbs up. Yes, I do see quite a few thumbs up there. Great, great. So Toastmasters is well known for public speaking. And they have a world championship of speakers, so of course, but they tend to be lesser known as a leadership organization, of which they are. So Leadership and Toastmasters training for leadership starts at the club level or the chapter level. So at MC Global Leaders and Speakers, with every meeting, we have meeting roles. You could be the MC for the meeting, which is called the Toastmaster of the day, or you could be an evaluator who is evaluating speeches or the meetings. All of these are leadership roles that you take at every meeting. Then we have officers for the chapter. I am the treasurer. We have a vice president. We have a president. All of those are other or additional opportunities to do leadership. If you want, you can even go beyond your own chapter to the National Capital District that covers the Washington, D.C. area to become a leader, or you could become a leader regionally or internationally because it is an international organization. Now, Toastmasters has a platform called Pathways, where there are projects that you work on that are on different paths. And one of the paths that I've chosen to do is the dynamic leadership pathway. So all of my projects are geared towards becoming an effective and a better leader. Now, if you want to become a distinguished Toastmaster, otherwise known as DTM, you are required to do a high performance leadership project. And in that project, you pick something and you work through it for a whole year and you show what the results are of that project. I had to do a project and I picked something that was work related, where I was researching the two major cocoa producers, which are the countries of Ivory Coast and Ghana, and how they could better work at being able to make more off of their cash crops that will go to their economy, and how small farmers and small chocolate makers could all be a part of this. And that took me about a year, but that was how that was the culmination in terms of receiving my Distinguished Toastmaster Award. So this time in doing the Dynamic Leadership Pathways, I'll be going for a second DTM award. And of course, Toastmasters has the slogan, Toastmasters International, where leaders are made. And that indeed is true. So Toastmasters International has a monthly magazine. And this time they featured two gentlemen who are very, very unique as Toastmasters. It's not so much that they are the prime minister and deputy prime minister, but it is their journey. One has been a member of Toastmasters for 40 years and the other one for 35 years. So they started out as young people, college students, and early when they were just leading from where they are without any titles. And somehow, all these years later, last year, they got these positions in the cabinet of the island nation of the Bahamas. Now, the interesting thing is that sure, they benefit from Toastmasters, but you better know that the Toastmasters Club that they're in, that the people that are newly starting out on their leadership journeys, as well as public speaking, are benefiting a lot from these two guys. They're serving as mentors and they are empowering others to be leaders. So I'll tell you this, in the 18 years I've been a member of Toastmasters, I have met everybody from college students to lawyers, doctors, politicians, company CEOs, you name it. They have either been through Toastmasters at one point in time or are going through Toastmasters right now. So I like this saying here. True leaders don't create followers. They create more leaders. So in leading from where you are, there are other people that are being inspired and being empowered. So you're actually creating more leaders when you do that. Well, I have a pictorial here from careercliff.com, and they have some traits of good leaders. As you look at this, you may see yourself in some of these traits. Self-motivated, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, otherwise known as EQ, accountable, integrity, empathy, respect, innovative, So many things. Some of these are traits that you have, and others are traits that you probably are working on or want to work on so that you can add to your tool as a good leader. I have another one here. Traits and skills of successful leaders. Adaptable to change. We're always in environments that are changing, and be able to be adaptable is an excellent skill to have. Alert to social environments. We've seen a lot of that, especially since the pandemic with COVID-19. We saw many people stepping up in their community or in their company where they work to be able to adapt, finding out what's going on in the environment and adapting their leadership in order to be able to succeed, or for the organization to succeed. Persistent, inspiring, skills such as being creative, analytical, a good communicator, and organized. All of these are skills and traits that we want to try to acquire in order to be able to lead successfully from where we are. Okay, so now I want to share some examples of leading from where you are. Let's look at some people that are doing this. First up, I have a picture here of some young people, middle school age and high school age, that I have launched a campaign since COVID-19 in order to teach people in the villages within their country of Haiti about COVID-19 prevention. What they're doing is they're installing water in pumps that is safe water for drinking and hand washing. And they're coming along with teaching. They're using jingles or songs that they put together and teaching people how the importance of having clean, safe water and hand washing and hygiene in order to prevent COVID-19. They're called Scouts. So they're like the equivalent of our Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, but it's a co-ed group. Another example is a young man by the name of Robert Sansoni. Now, Robert is an inventor. I saw him in Smithsonian Magazine, where what he is doing is he is inventing engines and designing motors that can be used for the electric car industry. He is very concerned and very conscious about environmental factors, and he wants to transform the industry by having a motor of which they do not have to get these types of minerals and things from the ground where they're depleting the environment. Now, interestingly enough, he decided to lead from where he was when he decided to make his project, his science project that they were asking him to do, to actually enter into a contest with his inventions, of which he won 75 grand. And he caught the attention of electric car makers. They couldn't resist the 17-year-old seeing what he had. And so he actually talks about not having a mentor as he designed one of his motors, and he failed at it over a dozen times before he got it right. But he's very persistent. He has a lot of those traits and skills. And what he is doing now is trying to patent his invention and push it and he hopes to be able to transform the electric car industry to be more responsible environmentally. Now, here is another person. And he's been at it a long time. We see the gray hair that he has. But I remember once upon a time when Mr. Lonnie Bunch was without a title, leading from where he was at the National Museum of American History. And he was concerned that, the museums for the Smithsonian did not have an African American museum, even though shortly after emancipation, the enslaved people said, we need a museum to talk about and to showcase our culture and our history here. So what did he start doing? He started running programs on African American history and culture out of the Natural History Museum a few decades ago. And I was a kid who was attending there with my mom. And so from there, they continue those programs until one day there got to be some rustling, and before you knew it, some hearings and things were going on in Congress, and there was actually a plan to build an actual museum that would come into fruition. So Mr. Bunch and his followers who are working on this together, before you knew it, they were given a temporary gallery to use as a museum within one of the museums that already existed. So once they got this building finished, which stands in the shadow of the monument, they made him director of the museum. So there comes the title. He became director of the National African American Museum of History and Culture. And after that, I think it was just in 2019 or just before the pandemic, he actually took another step in his leadership journey, where he was made the secretary of the entire Smithsonian Institution, which includes about 18 museums, research centers, and the National Zoo. So it all started by him leading from where he was. Our next and final example is Dolores Huerta. Now, she, in this picture, was young with her megaphone out there, being an activist for migrant farm workers. She's Mexican American, and there are a lot of laborers who work on the farms, picking the grapes, tomatoes, oranges, and things that we eat, but the conditions that they were working under and the lack of civil rights was a concern. So she decided to leave from where she was, and she had a lot of people that decided, yeah, this is something we should do. She empowered them. And so a lot of the time we hear about Cesar Chavez, who was the man who was a part of this, but we don't hear about her. And so she would later be able to work to form the United Farm Workers Association. And we see her here about 9 years ago or so, getting an award from former President Obama. And she was just in this area a couple months ago, and I wanted to go and see her, but I was not able to. But she's still leading, and she's 92 years old. So there are a lot of different styles or forms of leadership. And I encourage everybody to do an assessment, use an assessment tool for finding out their dominant or primary style of leadership. For me, it tends to be servant leadership, where I place other people's needs as a very high priority. When that includes being able to listen to others, being empathetic, having self-awareness, stewardship, commitment, and community building. But there's also some other styles. For example, a couple of other common styles is like value-based, where you act in accordance with the values or the mission of an organization. For example, Montgomery College has the mission of empowering students and changing lives, and they expect every single member of the college employees to do that, whether you are the president of the organization or you are the janitor or professor, cafeteria worker, or staff member. And indeed, we do that. And I noticed with our previous college president, Dr. Pollard, I reminisce when she said that she was a college student, a first-generation college student, how when she was studying in the evening there on campus where she was going to school, how the janitor would come and ask her what she was studying and encourage her and let her know that she didn't have the opportunity and she should take it. He was leading from where he was by interacting with those students and empowering those students and changing those students' lives. In addition to that, another type of leadership that you might hear a lot about is participatory or democratic leadership, where everybody's voice counts. And some of you may be aware that at Montgomery College, we have a governance council. And that is to be able to hear the voices of the students, employees, faculty, staff, administrators, campuses, and we have people that are representatives on those councils. That gives a good example of a participatory leadership style. So before we get to this, I want to say, When it comes down to leadership, there's some core skills. As a leader, you should model the way by creating standards of excellence and being the example for others to follow. You should inspire a shared vision, which means you're able to show people and help them visualize the possibilities for the future. You should challenge the process, experiment, take some risks, and try to make meaningful improvements in the situation or whatever you're working on. You should enable others to act. That's basically empowering them. And that will help to strengthen the whole team or the group that is working together, whether it's with your peers in class, or if you're in a student government organization, you can use these skills. Encourage from the heart and celebrate the accomplishments of others. And always be compassionate and have some empathy too. And don't afraid to be vulnerable and say, I don't know it all, and fail. You will have some failures and things like that, but use those as learning points and teaching points for the people that you are leading and empowering. Okay, so when it comes down to leadership skills, it's a lifelong learning process. It's not like, oh yeah, I went to school back, 20 years ago, I did leadership and, it's all done with. No, and that's why organizations like Toastmasters International exists, in order to be able to help you continuously sharpen, just like our two fellow Toastmasters in the Bahamas who are in positions of authority and leadership. It allows you to continue to be a lifelong learner. You could also get a certificate in leadership from an institution of higher learning or an advanced degree. You want to step out of your comfort zone. There's no way that you can become a better leader without stretching yourself. Become comfortable with discomfort. That's a phrase that a young lady that I used to be in an organization with, or she used to be in the organization, she would say that a lot. Create a plan and goals. Very important. So perhaps you're that student that wants to be part of the student senate or leadership. Well, maybe you start out being a member and an officer in a student government club on campus. And maybe you say in 2 years, you want to be a part of the student senate. But while you are in that club, perhaps you will shadow or you will look and see what the student senators do so that you can learn along the way. So by the time that 2 years is up, you already know what's required in that leadership role and how to do it. And then don't be afraid to have some constructive criticism. Use things like 360-degree feedback or evaluations and assessments. Toastmasters has evaluations for every meeting, and they really help because it tells you what you did well, what you can improve upon, and discusses a little bit of what your goals may be for the future if you incorporate these things. So another pictorial that I like, here we have a leader and he's there leading his team, leading his crew or his peers to the top. And the thing about it is that they're all holding hands. And I tell you, once he gets to the top, he is going to hand over the flag and he's going to allow the next person, he's going to empower them to continue leading. So as leaders and leading from where we are, that is a great part of our responsibility. So just to give you an idea about how much leadership goes on in Toastmasters. Toastmasters is a fairly huge network of clubs. There are over 280,000 members in 14,700 clubs in 144 countries around the world. So within Toastmasters, and especially during this time, during the pandemic, where we have been virtual, I've had an opportunity to meet leaders and public speakers from all over the world, join them for their meetings, make presentations at their meetings, have evaluation and assessment. at their meetings of how well I've done, as well as evaluate and assess them. So it has been a very good experience. And if you ever want to come and attend a Toastmasters Club, I will give my information and you are welcome. So I'm going to close out this presentation with a quote from a very famous leader. And I like the way he puts this information about effective leaders. This is Colin Powell, and what he said was, effective leaders are made, not born. They lead from trial and error and from experience.